Hello, welcome to another one of my general gun videos. This is not really a gunsmithing one, just a general gun one. I've just finished doing the little gunsmithing video, which you may have watched, about lightening the trigger on the Savage Model 3B, which is the lower one here. And I was rabbiting on about why I bought it and comparing it with my Winchester Model 67. So I thought I would just do a quick video and do a little comparison. Some of you might be interested if you're thinking of buying single shots or you don't know much about them or whatever. So back during the two wars in the 20s and 30s, it was kind of the heyday for 22 rifle production, I reckon. Despite the Depression, there just seemed to be a plethora of 22 rifle designs. Lots of these budget single shots. There was bolt action repeaters, pump actions, and most of the company, the big companies, Winchester, Savage, Remington, Mossberg, who else was there in the United States, had a range of 22 single shots. As the years went by, they tended to use the same basic platform and modify them. But yeah, so this is probably two of the more common ones that are available. Now I was about to say they're both great little rifles. I must admit I haven't even fired the bottom one because I've had this trigger issue with it, but that's sorted. So let's just quickly have a look at the characteristics of them. So let's have a look at the Winchester Model 67 first. Now, a bit of history. These are actually a John Browning design. They're actually derived from the, I think I'm right in saying it's the original Model 1900, which had this. I'll pull it apart in a minute and show you how it works, but had this kind of design of extractor, bolt, the size of the bolt, style of the stock and the barrels, etc. vary. In fact, actually, I've also got a Winchester Model 1904, which I might get that out in a sec, and I'll show you that as well. These early Winchesters, 1900, the 1902, and I think it was the 1890, which was 22 short only, and then there was the 1900, 20 short and long, and then the 1902, and then the 1904. And then, I don't know, I can't remember if there's any in between, but then the 67 was the first of the sort of more full-size, bigger bolt sort of rifles. Takedown, that was the other thing. Back during those days, of course, you've got to remember that we just sort of have this assumption that, you have a car, you jump in your car or truck or whatever and go shooting. In the 1920s and 30s, very, very few people had cars. So you either took a horse or you walked or you caught a train. Possibly buses, I'm not sure back then. So if you wanted to go out in the country to go shooting, you'd pack your rifle up and take it with you. So takedown rifles were very common. Almost all of the single shot bolt actions, the bolt action repeaters, the pump actions, some of the lever actions, they were all takedown so that you could actually make them into a shorter package and take them with you on the train or whatever. So both of these are takedown rifles. So I'll just have a look at this. So let's have a look at the Model 67 first. All right, I'll bring it over onto my very tidy workbench. All right, so you've got a plastic butt plate. The butt plates often change on these models. Often the early rifles had metal ones, and they tend to get plastic. I'm not sure about this model. I do think though that this groove in the stock means it's one of the very early. I think these were made. I'll look it up and put it on. They're made from 1924, I think, through until 1938 or something like that. But I think it was only the first year or two that actually had this groove. So this is a very early one. Chrome plated or nickel plated bolt and trigger. Let's get a bit of light on the subject. There we go. They've generally got a simple kind of ladder type sight. Let's turn it over. This one's, it's about, I think this one's about a 25.5 inch barrel. Someone at some stage has threaded it for a suppressor, which used to be legal here in Australia, but now aren't. So just in case you're interested, let's have a look at this. So I don't know if you can read that, but Winchester Repeating Arms Company, blah blah. That's another thing. Most of these old rifles, a lot of them, they weren't serialised. They didn't have to serialise them back in those days, and they didn't. But of course, here in Australia we do. So someone's actually punched a serial number on that, on top of that. But it says Winchester Model 67, 22 short, long, and long rifle, Winchester trademark. So that's the only marking really. So there we go. So let's look at the general. So we've got, so that's not cocked. These aren't automatic cocking rifles. You have to cock them manually. So you've got a safety catch. So where's my little snap cap gone? Actually, it was on the floor here a minute ago. There it is. I'll just put the snap cap in so I can show you how everything works. Alright, so what you do is you just sit your cartridge on top of there. You see the little extractors? You pull it all the way out there. So you sit your cartridge on top of there, and then, so that's now chambered, but it's not cocked. Has to be manually cocked, like that. You got a little safety. You can put that on safe, like that, or fire. And then fire's got a lovely trigger. This one is actually, it's super low. I've just been doing the Savage. This trigger's probably only about 2 pounds, I think, but I haven't touched it. That's what it was like. So yeah, so that's how it works. Now, if you look at this, if you put it back, you can see the extractor starting to extract the case. And they flick them out quite enthusiastically. So that's quite a different system to the Savage, which I'll show you in a minute. But anyway, let's take the rifle down, just have a look inside it. What there is, there's not much there. This is a 5-cent piece. It's about the same size as a dime, and that fits, like the actual diameter and thickness, it fits almost perfectly. So that's worth noting. So we just undo that. Now, one thing I haven't done, which I should do, to remove the bolt out of these, there's a bit of a trick. If you pull it back and have the extractor back and then try to remove the bolt, you won't be able to get it out. This is the same with all these Browning design Winchester single shots. It's a bit of a knack. Open it up, pull it back, but don't allow the extractor to come out. Leave the extractor in its place in the barrel, then squeeze the trigger and the bolt will come out like that. Okay, now it took me a while to work that out, I must say, but it's the same in this one, and then my Model 1904, which I'll show you in a minute, is the same with that as well. And this just comes straight out there. Now put that over there. If you look at this, the actual sear is actually mounted in the stock. See, there's a pin. Where's the pin? Oh, it's right way up here. See the pins up there? That's where it pivots. That's where the trigger pivots. So there's no return spring or anything on the trigger. It just simply goes up and pivots on that pin. So if you want to remove the trigger, you have to knock that pin out of the stock, which is hard to do without kind of, marring it and whatever. So unless you're refinishing the gun or there's some really good reason to do it, I wouldn't bother taking the trigger pin out. And that's about it. That's all there is in this stock. That's just that's the captive thing for the takedown. Not a bad piece of walnut. This has actually got, one of these days I'm going to refinish it. It's got a lovely pattern in it. Anyway, let's put that down there. And we'll just have a quick look at this. So, you can see there's this old John Browning at it again, this ingenious design. There's this kind of, this thing here, which acts as both a sear, because when the trigger actually goes into the front of that, and then when you pull the trigger, it pulls that down, which pulls the sear down and releases the bolt. I won't bother pulling apart, but these are actually quite easy to pull apart. This spring here acts as both the trigger spring. Do you pull against that? Pulling against it. It also acts as a detent spring for the extractor. You see that? See how the spring, if I push that forward, see how that just acts as a detent spring. So it's amazing that a lot of these John Browning things, it's pretty ingenious how he thought up all these things. But that's the basic same design as most of these, as I said, all those models. And then there's some of the later models, some of the, I can't remember all the different models, this various 60s and whatever, made in the 1920s, or made from right through from the turn of the century right through to basically the Second World War, I think. All the same basic design. Yeah, so that's about it for the Model 67. I just changed my mind actually. There's a bit of a trick to putting these together. When you put the stock on this, what you have to do is make sure your trigger's forward, because the trigger's got that little thing that goes like this. See that little thing there? Make sure your trigger's forward so that's actually sitting up. I might be able to do it. And then you got to slide this thing, the back of the sear thing, this thing here, you got to slide that in under the trigger guard. If you just put it in, it'll kind of go together, but then the rifle won't work. So you got to kind of start frontwards and slide it back. And I just buggered that up because you see how the trigger's gone to the very back of the trigger guard, even though it's in. So I've actually missed, because I'm trying to do it one-handed, I've missed the sear. So I'm going to put the phone down and do it properly. All right, yeah, so it definitely took two hands. So you can see there, that's where the trigger should sit. And you can actually, I haven't even screwed it together, but you can sort of see it's dropping the sear as you pull the trigger. And so you sort of put it in, and then you put the action into the stock, and then you can actually slide it back about ½ an inch, and it'll slide in under that thing till it's hard up there. And then your screw should just screw straight in. There we go. And then the bolt, the bolt's easier to get in than it is to get out, so you just basically can put it in, squeeze the trigger, get the sear out of the way, and then it'll now work. So pull it back and we can pull the extractor back, push it forward, and there we go. Now I'll just put this away and I'll get the Model 04 out. Right, we got this little bag here. It's about, from there to there is about probably a bit over 2 feet, I guess. Probably 25 inches. What this actually is a barrel bag for a mini-my machine gun, ex-army. But it just happens to be exactly the right spot, because if I open this up, you can see it's lined with kind of asbestos-y sort of heat-proof stuff. Pull that out. Stop. Excuse my dirty feet. It's been raining today. I've been out in the yard with my bare feet. All right, so here we go. So you can sort of see. I've got this fancy little kind of trigger guardy thing. But again, takedown, same basic design as a 67. You got that trigger and the little kind of thing mounted with a pin in the stock. So it goes together the same way. And again, you've got this same basic design of sear extractor system. Exactly, when the receiver and everything's the same, but as you can see, the bolt's it's a much smaller bolt. This action, like the 1890, 1900, 1902, 1904, they're all basically the same action, I think. they're actually originally designed for 22 short only. And if you look at how far that extractor comes back, compared to, actually I'll put it together and I'll compare it then. Compared to the Model 67, it only comes back the length of a 22 short. So one problem with this rifle, nice little rifle, this one shoots well and everything, but if you put a long rifle in it, it'll extract it halfway, and then you need a little pair of pliers. If your fingers aren't strong enough, you need a pair of pliers or something to grab the case and pull it out the rest of the way out of the chamber, which is a bit of a drag. But right, that was even trickier to put together. You really have to try several times to kind of get that seared and get the. I discovered you really need to have the bolt, put the bolt in. It's not really easy to put the bolt in or out when the receiver's in the stock. Anyway, if you look at this rifle, it's got like a really heavy barrel, shorter than the 67. This is probably about a 22 inch barrel. This is the 04. The 02 differs in it doesn't have this bit here, similar shaped stock, and it has a longer, more slender barrel. But the bolt and everything is kind of the same. You see there's a bit more of this, rather than having a dovetail, it's a little screwed on side. But again, we've got markings manufactured by the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. Now this is interesting. It says Model 04, 22 short, long or extra long. So this is before the long rifle was even invented. So this has actually got an extra long chamber. So the extra long is like a cartridge that, the long has like a long rifle case with a little 28 grain bullet. The extra long is like a longer case again. It's like it's an obsolete cartridge. It's longer than the 22 long rifle, but not as long as the 22 Magnum. But not nearly as powerful. More powerful than probably anything at the time. Probably about the same power as a long rifle, I think, but it's just a bigger case. But yeah, so yeah, very interesting shape of stock. These they got this sort of real kind of weird shaped stock, but yeah, interesting little rifle. And again, that cost me. I bought it from the same shop as I got the Savage, $100. So nice little piece of shooting history. There's the three models side by side. So now we'll have a look at the Savage Model 3. Now let's bring it over here. So the Savage Model 3, again, they were made from, I think, the 20s through the 30s. I know there was the original Model 3 was like the Winchester 67. It was a non-cocking bolt. You had to cock it. That was around for a few years, and then they actually modified it, called it the 3A, and made it cock on opening like this one. Then the 3B came along a bit later, maybe in the 30s, I think. I think the difference between the 3A and the 3B is really just the trigger guards a bit different, and a few things of stock or whatever. But the basic rifles are all the same. And then there was actually a 3C, I think, where they actually changed the steel trigger guard to an alloy one and whatever. But yeah, they're all basically the same, I think. You know, apart from the very first Savage Model 3 without a leather. All right, so it's probably just easier if I sit down to do this, because I'm filming my iPhone. So again, similar sort of rifle in a lot of ways. You know, takedown, same kind of adjustable kind of sight. Similar sort of barrel length to the Model 67. Thicker stock, the whole thing is just a bit more chunky. You can see how chunky it is, that is across there. But one thing you will notice with those Winchesters is the barrel and the receiver are all machined from one piece of steel. So the barrel's kind of made, and then the inside of the receiver is machined out, but it's all one piece of steel. Whereas this has actually got a receiver, and then the barrel's actually just in there, and there's actually a pin just holding it in place, which is probably ample. And I doubt, there's this theory that a solid receiver is going to be more accurate, but in this sort of rifle, I don't think it makes any difference. But yeah, the difference with these is it's cock on closing, or cock on opening actually. So there we go. It's not cocked, and I can just lift the bolt, put it down, and it's cocked. So the markings on this one are not as much on as the Winchester. Savage Arms Company Corporation, Utica, New York, made in the USA, Model 3B, and that's about it. Again, these didn't have serial numbers. This has actually been serialized back here. Someone's punched a serial number on the back, but it wouldn't have had a serial number originally. You can see it's actually tapped for a proprietary type. You know, it's probably made by Lyman or Weaver or somewhere, but a scope mount that goes on there. I believe some of the earlier or later ones actually had some tapping on the back here for peep sight. Yeah, so we've got just a plastic butt plate, and I'll pull this apart, but this is where the big difference is. Oh, well, actually, before I pull it apart, we'll have a look at the bolt. So this is more of a standard kind of what you're used to in a modern bolt action rifle. You've got a spring extractor there, and then I'll show you the bolt. There's actually a little plunger ejector, which when you pull it back, it actually pops out of the front and pushes the case out. These are just simply pull the trigger and pull the bolt out like that. Really easy. So I'll just pull the rifle apart. Right, so you'll see the difference between this and the Winchester is this one has the trigger actually attached to the receiver. It's just a simple trigger there that just lowers the sear, nothing much to it. And you haven't got all that extraction stuff that is the Winchester, because you've just got your extractor on your bolt. So yeah, there's not much going on there really. There's just the little thing dovetailed into the barrel where your takedown. There's the bolt. So there's the ejector. You can see. If I push that back, and then when the bolt gets to the back of its travel, it hits a stop, and it pushes the ejector forward. Little extractor with a spring in it. It's held by a pin. So if necessary, if that ever got weak, you could easily knock that pin out and replace the extractor spring. Yeah, now I'll put it back together. I'll just show you, it's got a safety. I'll just show you how that works. All right, so you look on the top of the bolt's closed. It's cocked. You can see it's cocked because this is a space here. So you got the little arrow there, and then if you look on the striker, there's a little S. You pull the striker back, turn it around like that. Yeah, I pull the trigger. The whole sear has actually been turned around and held in place, so the trigger is actually completely disconnected. So it's very safe. There's no way it can fire from there. Be a bit, well, I suppose it'd be a bit awkward if you know, not as easy as a manual safety if you're shooting. But generally, I think with single shot rifles, you don't use the safety. Well, I don't anyway. So anyway, there we go. Put that down there again. All right, so that was just a little roundup of the comparison between my three early 20th century, first decade, second decade, and third decade of the 20th century, 3 single-shot rifles for comparison. So hopefully you found that interesting. Any questions, give us a yell. Feel free to subscribe or push like, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.